Oh, hello, smart viewers. Welcome to Face with me, William. And as usual, I'm going to be discussing about variously interesting topics in each episode. And for this episode, I'm going to be discussing more about traveling around the world, specifically in more on the below part of Indonesia, which is Australia. There are a lot of exotic places in Western Australia, specifically. It's southern hemisphere, and it's about the size of Western Europe and 1/3 of Australia's total landmass. So before that, I'm gonna give out some tips on how to travel with affordable prices, with cheap, with cheap prices. So the first tip is that you have to travel slow. So the slower you move, the cheaper it becomes. On the road, time is money, so buses, trains, and planes add up quickly. So having more time to longer from place to place means you won't have to pay more for the express options. And the second tip is that travel in low season. So if you have the luxury of being able to avoid peak season travel, grab it. Prices jumps up considerably during the school holidays, and it's not just the summer you should avoid. So don't forget that Easter, Christmas, and the 2 half-term holidays are also likely to be more expensive. So traveling out of season will mean cheaper flights and less busy destinations. And the next tips is that you have to pre-book airport parking. So if you need to leave your car at the airport, be sure to book your parking well in advance and check out all your options. If valet parking might sound like an expensive choice, but could work out cheaper than a short stay car park, and especially if booked in advance. And the next tips is that you bring your own food on board. So don't pay through the nose for a stall ham sandwich on your flight. Save money by packing your own snacks. So as long as the foods aren't liquid like soup, hummus, or yogurt, it's fine to bring them on board. So prices are often hiked up at airport restaurants too. So if you have a long wait for your flight, make sure you stock up on nibble. So be sure to bring your own food on board. And the last one is that you have to pack smart. So don't waste your money on expensive mini toiletries that you'll just throw away once they run out. Instead, buy yourself a set of small refillable plastic bottles and fill them up each time you go away. So that's basically several tips that you can apply to travel in cheap or affordable prices. And for the next segment, I'm gonna invite my special guest for today's episode, and she's going to be discussing about specifically for tourism in Western Australia. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned on Face to Face. Hello, smart viewers. Welcome back to Face. Still with me, William. And as I promised on the previous segment, I'm going to invite my special guest for today's episode. And please welcome Francisca. Hello, Francisca. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you.
Maybe you can discuss about your recent activities related to promoting Western Australia.
Okay. Obviously, in promoting tourism, normally we will have to work with our trade partners, which can be airlines as well as travel agents, and few other partners that can support the tourism industry as well. And on top of that, we also need to maintain our media awareness of the destinations, and that will in line with our PR strategy and planning.
So maybe you can discuss about what makes you interested in promoting Western Australia, and what is it that special about Western Australia?
Okay, well, I love traveling once as the main reason, and Australia as the closest Western countries to Indonesia. it's very easy to get there, especially Western Australia as the closest state to Indonesia. So it's only 4.5 hours. So to go to Western Australia, it's very easy. It's, I think it will be cheaper than other states. And it has quite a lot of places for you to explore, because 1/3 of Australia continent is Western Australia.
Oh, so it's the largest.
It's the largest
parts of the continent
state,
also.
yes.
Yeah. And you know, like there are a lot of you know, like things that maybe attract tourists to visit a certain country or a city. And maybe you can tell us about, you know, like what are the main key points that you can like promote about Western Australia?
Well, the key things about Western Australia, well, Western Australia divided into 5 different regions. We call them Northwest, Coral Coast, Perth, Golden Outback, and Southwest. For now, for Indonesian markets, we are promoting highly on Southwest, Perth, and Coral Coast. The reason being is that because we don't see many Indonesian dispersed that far yet up to North and Golden Outback. So for that Coral Coast, Perth, and North and Southwest, actually you can get a very diverse experience. Then you can see, if you're flying to Western Australia, you can see from up above the air, actually the color, when you go into Australian continents, the color is slightly from brown towards red, and then when you go to Perth, it will be quite different color, like a little bit like bluish. And then when Perth, and you go further down to south, it will be a bit greenish because they have a lot of wineries.
Oh, so there are lots of attractions that the tourists
Yes.
can go. Yeah, there are a lot of selections. Yeah, and maybe you can also describe about, like as you mentioned before, like the Coral Coast or the Northwest. What is it about Northwest and Coral Coast that, you know, tourists can visit?
Okay, normally when the first time you enter Western Australia, you will be landing in Perth. So from Perth, actually, there are a lot of places we call it Perth and surrounds, because in Perth you can go to Swan Valley, which is the closest winery regions from the city, and then you can go to Fremantle, which is quite a historic city, about 20 minutes from Perth. And then from Perth you can go about an hour to Mandurah or Rockingham, where you can swim with a dolphin and experience some seafood cruise. That's we call Perth and surrounds. But outside of that, when you decided to go further up to north, then you can end up in the Coral Coast regions. The first place that you visit normally is the Pinnacles. The Pinnacles, and then you go further up to Cervantes, Geraldton, and Calgary, and so on until further up. So those Coral Coast regions actually have a lot of things, activities, and places for you to visit.
Oh, yeah.
I will let you know further
what
further
details,
things you can do.
So, like, there are, like, you know, like wineries and stuff, and related to nature, and also there are like the city parts. Yeah. What can tourists find about, you know, more in the city, like? You know,
if you are a city person, then you should go to Perth. If you are a more into water adventures, then you can go to Coral Coast. If you are more into caving, walking tour, hiking, you can go to down south, because they have a lot of caves and hills.
Oh yeah, one of the things that, you know, like Australia has is like its own nature, you know, like it's like the outback thing. Like,
yes,
what can
right.
Tourists find attractive, like more in, as you mentioned, like the caves? What are the main attractions?
Well, the cave, Australian locals, the first residences is Aborigines.
Yeah.
So many of their caves is actually being exposed to Aborigines culture. So in the cave, you can see how these Aborigines people normally do their praising ceremony. And then in the cave, they have few activities that they can do normally, maybe a celebrations to call in their ancestors and so on. So many caves in Western Australia have a lot of linked to Aborigines culture.
And also you mentioned before, like there are lots of tourist attractions. And what are some of several spots that you recommend?
Okay. So for the Perth itself, you can do a segway, you can do a kayaking at Swan River, you can do a helicopter rides, you can do a seaplane rides to go further up or further down to Margaret River where the winery is. So, and then you can do, you can go to Kings Park. Kings Park is claimed as one of the largest park in the world, even bigger than the one in New York City, the Central Park. So, and then if you go further up to north, which is the Coral Coast, you can do paddling in the sea, and then you can swim with the sea lions. You can go into Kalbarri National Park, where you can see the nature's window. And then if you go further down, you can see the whale shark migrations, you can swim with dolphins, and then you can go to the wineries and do the tours.
And also one of the things that tourists may find attractive is food. It's maybe what are the foods that you recommend on different sides of Western Australia?
Okay, well, that's quite a tricky question because for Western Australia, we are very proud of their seafood, and lobster is one of the reasons why you should go to Western Australia, because lobster is very fresh. You can get it anywhere else within Australia, actually. And then outside of that, apart from the Western food, because we are quite multicultural, so you can find a lot of different foods like Asian food, Middle Eastern food, Indian food, as well as some halal food as your options.
Oh yeah, so there are a lot of selections, yeah,
yes,
especially for Indonesians.
And don't forget, always pair it with local wines.
Oh yeah, okay. And the conversation is getting interesting, but we're gonna have to take a little break. So be sure to stay tuned on Face to Face. Viewers, welcome back to Face to Face. Still with me, William, and my special guest for today's episode, Francisca. And we're gonna play a little game a little bit, maybe to spice things up. So, you know, as you mentioned before that you like to travel, maybe you can like just hit things up with some little games. It's like a choose between one or two things that you can like. I will give out some questions, and you can just choose which one is you most prefer.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's begin. Yeah. So
okay, I'm ready.
The first one is, you prefer working or traveling?
Traveling, definitely.
You prefer walk or ride?
Walk.
Beach or mountains?
Oh, mountains.
Shoes or sandals?
Sandals.
Summer or winter?
I love winter.
Fruit or vegetables?
Fruits.
And soda or mineral water?
Water.
Fancy food or street food?
Street food is always the best.
And mall or market?
Markets.
And the last one is hotel or condo?
I would say condo because I can do laundry. When you travel, it's important.
So it's more stuff that you can do when you stay in a condo. Yeah.
Yes.
And as you mentioned before, you prefer to walk than ride. What is the reason?
Well, one of the reasons for you to explore new places is by walking. Why? Because when you walk, you can go to places that actually not everyday people can see. So normally I will go to small ale, and then like alley with all the mural walls that I can get the story of the city.
Oh yeah, you get in touch more in the city.
Yes, and you see what the everyday people are doing. Normally, if you go in the morning, people are busy rushing for work, and then during lunchtime, you can see the crowd comes out from the buildings. Then you can join together with the crowd.
Oh yeah, and you prefer winter than summer?
Yes, because I don't like hot places. So I will prefer winter because, I don't know, winter just makes you feel different, because in Indonesia we don't get winter, so for me winter is quite special.
Oh yeah, so yeah, those is the game. Yeah, so we can continue to our discussion as you also mentioned before. We discussing about the culinary, culinary aspect of Western Australia. As I mentioned, there are a lot of selections on foods, and also there are halal foods also that you mentioned. Maybe you can recommend places that Indonesian, especially Muslim peoples, that that can enjoy the culinary aspect without getting any worry.
Yeah, right. So, well, the first questions people ask whenever they travel is, how do I get my food, especially if you're Muslims? So, in Australia, they don't have halal certification yet. However, there are plenty of restaurants or places they can get their meals at. There are a lot of Malaysian and Singaporean halal food, I would say, and then there are plenty of Middle Eastern and Indian restaurants as well. And besides foods, normally they will ask, where do I get to go to pray, because we have to pray. So in some hotels, you can ask for directions, then you can pray in your hotel room, or you can pray in the closest mosque.
Oh yeah, so there are some easy access to that also, yeah. And also, what are the things that tourists may be concerned about, like transportations, like going to places from one to another may require, like they thinking about the budget or something.
Yes.
Maybe you can kind of like give out some alternatives that tourists can go to in terms of transportation.
Okay, I can give you good news. Traveling within city of Perth is free on a cat bus. We call it cat bus. You just need to stop or wave them at the right bus stop. And then if you want to go outskirts or out of town, then the easiest for you is either you rent a car or you can take a train. But train doesn't go train is going within Perth and surroundings. But if you want to go to further up to, let's say, Pinnacles or go down south, then I will recommend you to drive. Driving in Australia is very easy because we are driving on the right side as well, the same as Indonesia. So no worries for that. You just need to get your driving license and go and drive in Australia. Explore the place, because when you drive, you can explore more places rather than you hop onto a bus tour.
Oh yeah.
But if you doesn't want to drive, you can hop into a sit-in coach, we call them. It's a tour bus.
Oh, it's a free tour bus.
It's a paid tour bus because you're going out of town.
Oh yeah, okay. And also, one of the things that maybe tourists may concern is like, what is the peak season? What is the low season? What is the peak season for Western Australia?
Well, Western Australia peak season is the school holiday, because when the school holidays, obviously parents want to bring their kids out. And then for us, it's the same school holidays.
Middle of the year? Or?
Middle of the year sometimes is around March, where they have school holiday and Easter break. So Easter break normally is about 2 weeks, and then Christmas and year end.
Oh, so those are the peak season. Tourists may catch more in the low season, so they can
and for us, obviously
affordable.
Traveling in low seasons is more cheaper.
And it's more, like accessible maybe, and not too many crowds.
Correct.
Yeah. And also about tourists, also one of the things that, maybe concern is about, maybe there are certain do's and don'ts about Western Australia, and, maybe differs from another country. What is it about Western Australia that maybe tourists can, like avoid, or, some of the rules?
Well, I would talk about the don'ts first, because that's most important. Don't break any laws in Australia, because if you do so, it will affect your next permit to Australia. And then the do's one, explore as much as you can, and then go as far as you can, and bring enough clothes, and just enjoy your traveling. And just make sure you have operator connections, because if you're going out of town, sometimes they don't have signal, so it is important to have your phone connected to the networks.
Be sure to check on your communication devices.
Yes.
And also, like, for kind of like tourists who are first experienced Western Australia, what are the tips that you would recommend for the first timer?
The first timer, okay, just give enough time to apply for your visa, because visa applications can take up to 15 days. And then plan your travel wisely. Instead of going one place to another in making a U-turn, you maybe try to see where's your entering point and where's your outing point, so that you don't waste time. And then bring enough enough clothes, like I said. And then most important as well is set the place that where you want to go first.
Explore more on a specific place, then you can go to another place. Like
yeah,
that,
so let's say you are more into beaches person. So if you want to go to the beach, then you have to know where the beaches is. Don't get lost and end up in the mountains.
Yeah, and so what are the I'm curious about, you know, like what people like. What are the typical activities of the people there in Western Australia? Are they more busy or they are more laid back? So maybe tourists can, you know, like experience more about the scenery.
I would say most Australians are laid back, so they're really into nature. They can go and picnic at the park, and then they can just go and do campfire or camping by the bushes on weekends, and then they can just swim at the beach every day if they want to, because there are plenty of access to the beaches in Australia.
Oh yeah, so we've come to the end of the show. Maybe you can share some of the information about how smart viewers can get connected or to find out more about Western Australia.
Okay, well, first step is for you guys to log into our website, the www.westernaustralia.com. It's in Bahasa, so it is easy for you guys to get information too. There are a lot of sample of itineraries, a lot of deals, as well as recommended places for you to go.
Oh yeah, so thank you, Francisca,
thank you,
for joining
William.
today's show. We've come to the end of the show, so be sure to check out another episode of Face to Face at the same day and time. Until then, I'm William Brinaldi, signing off. Bye-bye.